word special does not begin to do it justice, said Donald Trump of the relationship between the United States and Britain. We're like two notes in one chord, or two verses of the same poem, each beautiful on its own. That was in September, when the US president spoke at a banquet hosted by King Charles III to mark his unprecedented second state visit to Britain. Since then, Trump's comments about Britain have not been so lyrical or so kind.
Rawalpindi, Punjab Minister for Youth Affairs and Sports Faisal Ayub Kokar on Sunday asked for the installation of a solar energy system at the Liaquat Bag Sports Complex and for improvements to the condition of the food street on Double Road. He visited the Liaquat Bag Sports Complex and reviewed the ongoing development work under the scheme Rehabilitation of Liaquat Bag Sports Complex.
Restrictions still in place around Nurkan Air Base. Localities still closed are likely to reopen today, along with Pewadai and Faizabad bus stands, says official Rawalpindi. After a week of closure, many areas in Rawalpindi and Islamabad have reopened, bringing a sense of relief to the residents. However, residential and commercial areas around Nurkan Air Base still remain closed. Negotiations to hammer out the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement took nearly 2 years before a breakthrough was achieved. Therefore, expecting Iran and the US to reach a deal that can end the war launched by America and Israel, while covering complicated issues such as reparations and freedom of navigation in the Gulf within days, is unrealistic, while the global economy is reeling from the war, particularly the Iranian and American blockades of the Strait of Hormuz, and people around the world desire a swift resolution. These matters take time. That is why it would be wrong to label Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi's visit to Islamabad on Saturday a failure. Although US President Donald Trump refused to send his emissaries after Mr. Araghchi left Pakistan for Muscat, the game is far from over and hectic efforts to salvage the diplomatic process continue.
Oil prices have climbed higher amid stalled peace talks between the United States and Iran. Brent crude rose more than 2% on Sunday after hopes for a second round of ceasefire negotiations between Washington and Tehran unraveled over the weekend.
Truecaller is one of the world's most widely used caller identification platforms, with more than 500 million users. Now it's entering a more challenging phase as growth slows in its largest market and competition intensifies across telecom networks and smartphone platforms. Much of Truecaller's growth has been driven by India, which accounts for over 350 million users, or about 70% of its global base. The volume of spam and unwanted calls has turned the app from a simple caller ID service into a more embedded layer of everyday communication. Islamabad. PTI Kisan Wing Central Information Secretary Khalid Nawaz Sadraich said on Sunday that the absence of officially designated private companies for wheat procurement in major wheat-producing hubs of small-scale farmers has triggered a wave of panic, leaving growers vulnerable to middlemen purchasing harvests at throwaway prices. In a statement, Sadraich said that based on field reports gathered from different parts of Punjab, the provincial government's designated private companies have marginalised small-scale farmers in the wheat procurement process, registering only 65,000 out of more than 4 million farmers, despite 2 weeks of the purchasing drive.
Lahore. 5 incarcerated PTI leaders at Kot Lakhpat jail have called upon the federal government to stop passing the buck and focus on real issues being faced by the power division, adding that false narratives could never address real challenges. In a statement issued through their counsel Rana Mudassar Umer, jailed leaders Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Dr. Yasmin Rashid Ejaz Chaudhry, Omar Sarfraz Chima and Mian Mahmoudur Rashid bemoaned that the country's power division, with an installed generation capacity of 46,000 ambibu, was not able to manage the current peak demand of 19,000 ambibu.
and Karachi, the federal government has approved the long-awaited price fixation of 35 new essential and life-saving medicines, with another 45 molecules expected to be cleared shortly, and in a move aimed at ending critical shortages that had disrupted treatment for patients across Pakistan, a senior official and industry sources said on Sunday. And the official said the decision would improve the availability of several high-priority therapies that had remained inaccessible due to prolonged delays in price fixation and forcing patients to either go without treatment or depend on costly and often unregulated smuggled medicines.
Amazon's podcasting business has transformed over the past 6 months, according to the New York Times. Back in August 2025, the company reportedly eliminated more than 100 jobs from its podcast studio, Wondery. At the time, Amazon insisted it was not shutting Wondery down, and that appears to be technically true. It still uses the Wondery brand.
And Theo Baker is graduating from Stanford this spring with something most seniors don't have, a book deal, a George Polk Award that he received for his investigative reporting as a student journalist, and a front-row account of one of the most romanticized institutions in the world, his forthcoming How to Rule the World. An Education in Power at Stanford University was excerpted Friday in The Atlantic, and based on that alone, and I can't wait to see the rest. The only question worth asking is the same one Baker himself might be too close to answer, which is, can a book like this actually change anything? Or does the spotlight, as it always seems to, and send more students racing to the place?
Two of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's biggest political rivals say they are joining forces in a bid to oust his coalition government in the upcoming election expected later this year. The former Prime Minister's right-wing Naftali Bennett and centrist Yair Lapid issued statements on Sunday announcing the merger of their parties, Bennett 2026 and There Is a Future.
A highway bomb attack in southwestern Colombia has killed 19 people and injured at least 38, the latest spate of violence ahead of next month's presidential election. Buses and vans were left mangled in the blast Saturday on the Pan American Highway in the restive southwestern Cauca department. Iran's top diplomat, Abbas Araghchi, has left Islamabad for Moscow, the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, as mediators hoped to keep the prospect of more Tehran-Washington talks alive. Araghchi sandwiched a visit to Amman's Muscat in between trips to the Pakistani capital and left on Sunday to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow the following day. But there was no indication that direct Iranian talks with the United States would resume.
After 15 years as Apple's CEO, Tim Cook will be stepping down from the role in September. On the latest episode of TechCrunch's Equity podcast, Kirsten Korosek, Sean O'Kane, and I discussed Apple's big announcement. We reflected on how Apple has changed since Cook took over from Steve Jobs in 2011 and what challenges incoming CEO John Ternus will be facing.
And US President Donald Trump and his officials were the likely targets of a suspected gunman who attempted to storm the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Acting US Attorney General Todd Blanche has said the suspect, named by US media as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, was arrested after police said he opened fire near a security checkpoint during the event at a Washington, D.C. hotel on Saturday. And Israel has issued new forced evacuation notices for areas in southern Lebanon, ordering residents of 7 towns that lie beyond its so-called buffer zone to leave, ramping up the conflict with Hezbollah despite a US-brokered ceasefire. An Israeli military spokesperson said in a statement on X on Sunday that the Lebanese armed group was violating the ceasefires and that Israel would act against it, telling residents to head north and west.
US President Donald Trump reiterated on Sunday that talks with Iran would be held remotely and commended Pakistan, which has been playing a mediatory role between Washington and Tehran, saying that Islamabad would stay involved in the process. The US president's remarks came during a phone interview with Fox News, where he said if they, Iran, want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there is a telephone. If they want, they can talk, but we are not sending people to travel 18 hours to meet.
Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar said on Sunday that traffic restrictions around Islamabad's Red Zone and Serena Hotel, which was expected to be the venue for the now cancelled US-Iran talks, had been lifted. Traffic restrictions around the Serena Hotel and the Red Zone in Islamabad have been lifted today. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the people of Pakistan, especially the residents of Islamabad and Rawalpindi, for their patience and cooperation.
United States authorities believe a gunman who is accused of trying to storm the White House Correspondents' Association dinner was targeting US President Donald Trump and members of his administration. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said on Sunday that authorities believe the suspect travelled from California to Washington, D.C. by train via Chicago.
And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was back in Pakistan on Sunday, a diplomatic source told Dawn, a day after he left Islamabad for a visit to Amman as part of a tri-nation tour. He is undertaking the trip against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts, notably by Pakistan, to bring Tehran and Washington to the table to talks aimed at ending the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th.
Tehran, Iran, across Iran's capital, life has returned to a kind of normal. Markets, cafes and shops are opening their doors, and some highways are buzzing with traffic once again as a fragile ceasefire with the United States largely holds after weeks of devastating US-Israeli attacks. Police in Thailand say they have arrested an Indonesian man accused of defrauding Americans out of $10 in romance scams, and he will be extradited to the United States. The 33-year-old was arrested at a luxury resort on the island of Phuket on Friday, local media and the AFP news agency reported.
Honor has introduced two new gaming laptops in China, the WinH9 Gaming Laptop 2026. Both models feature 16-inch displays, Intel processors, NVIDIA RTX 50 series graphics, fast charging, and Honor's new Dongfeng cooling system. The WinH9 is positioned as the higher-end model, while the WinH7 targets buyers looking for lower pricing with strong gaming performance.
Loyalists of President Mahmoud Abbas won most races in Palestinian municipal elections. Election officials said in a vote that for the first time in nearly 2 decades included a city in the besieged Gaza Strip. The elections had been held at a highly sensitive moment amid complex challenges and exceptional circumstances. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa said as results were announced on Sunday. Newly uncovered fossils in southwestern China are forcing scientists to rethink when Earth first shifted from simple, flat, primitive life forms to complex animals capable of moving, feeding and shaping ecosystems. We're talking about real animals with all the natural traits to grow, feed, move and graze.
And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was back in Pakistan on Sunday, a diplomatic source told Dawn. A day after he left Islamabad for a visit to Amman as part of a tri-nation tour, he is undertaking the trip against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts, notably by Pakistan, to bring Tehran and Washington to the table to talks aimed at ending the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28. And Islamabad. Pakistan has notified 6 routes for the transportation of goods to Iran against an incashable bank guarantee, amid reports that thousands of containers destined for Iran are awaiting clearance at Pakistani ports. For this to come into force, the Ministry of Commerce has issued a statutory regulatory order, Transit of Goods, through territory of Pakistan Order 2026. And Israel has escalated its attacks on the Gaza Strip in the past week, with at least 4 Palestinians killed across the devastated enclave, including a 40-year-old woman in Khan Yunis in the past 24 hours amid daily violations of the October ceasefire. Medics and local health officials report more than 25 Palestinians have been killed in the past week alone, taking the number of people killed since the ceasefire to more than 800.
Someone's offering an unusual deal for a 13-acre property in Mill Valley, just north of San Francisco. Homeowner and investment banker Storm Duncan has created a LinkedIn page for the home, which he said he'd like to exchange for Anthropic equity.